want to thank the people that are here. I'm the East Windsor Mayor, Janice Mironov, and tonight is to present some of the preliminary findings and thoughts that have been prepared in connection with a bicycle and pedestrian study that East Windsor Township has undertaken. We were very grateful that with respect to conducting this, that we were accepted into a program by the New Jersey Department of Transportation that provided grant funding in our application to be considered, provided to us grant funding that was utilized by them to retain a consultant and to work with a committee that I appointed to look at the township and to look at how to enhance our non-motorized transportation and access throughout the community, to provide improved pedestrian and bicycle access. During the course of the study, of course, we looked at the existing trailways and the existing infrastructure in terms of our roadways, our sidewalks, and I think it was a very helpful exercise for all of us. I do just want to recognize the committee members, in addition to myself, consisted of our Deputy Mayor, Peter Yeager, Council Member Perry Shapiro, our Planning Board Chairperson, Ed Kelly, our Environmental Commission Chairperson and Green Team Member, Ron Ballant, our Clean Communities Vice Chairman, Gary Fournier, and Police Lieutenant Chris Jackson. Additionally, I do want to just recognize our ongoing liaison to the committee and other projects, Morrow from Hightstown Borough, and we thank you for connecting us because it's important, and you'll see in the study that one of the important goals, I think, of both of our communities of East Windsor and Hightstown, and certainly something in the study, was both to look at areas that we could improve within East Windsor, but also how we could enhance linkages with our closest neighbor, Hightstown, as well as throughout the region to the benefit of all of our residents. This has always been an area that's been a high priority for the East Windsor Council and the administration to allow and provide improved opportunities for bicycling, for pedestrians, both for recreation, for getting to shopping, to public facilities within the community, for some people to get them to work, to school. And so it's something that we put a great deal of importance on. We have been proactive in outreaching for grant opportunities to provide additional off-street trailways and to do some sidewalk infill. But we feel that the opportunity to do this study and to take a real overview of the town has and will provide us with additional insights on how we can enhance the community. I want to kind of provide a disclaimer as mayor a bit. I think it'll be provided as well in the presentation. But this is intended to be a master plan, a guide for East Windsor Township when we look at how to best prioritize projects, when we outreach for grant opportunities to the county, to the state, to the federal government. Obviously, undertaking these types of projects are not inexpensive things, and we are always very attentive to the expenditure of money and how to best utilize those funds toward projects. So this will give us a guide. It'll help us prioritize. We hope by having done it, it'll give us maybe extra bonus points and competitive opportunities when we do reach out to do partnerships or for grant funding. So we are very pleased tonight to invite those of you who are here tonight. We're also going to be putting the materials up on our website for a period of time so that others will have the opportunity to view the presentation and be able to provide input. And I'd like to, at this point, turn it over to the consultant, and he can undertake the presentation and introduce anybody else that would be appropriate. From Parsons Brinkerhoff, Peter Kramer.
We've been here for quite a while. We're one of the largest transportation engineering firms in the country, if not the world. But we have a really good home here in Mercer County. So let me just introduce to you, first of all, Bill Revere is our New Jersey Department of Transportation sponsor. We've worked with Bill quite a bit, and we're very happy that working with him again. The bulk of the presentation is going to be Mr. Reed Sibley, young gentleman in a tie, and in the back, Ruchi Srivastava is going to help us as well. So what we're going to do is we have a presentation that's going to take about 20 or 25 minutes, and Reed's going to do most of that. But plenty of time for questions and answers, anything you're interested in. And then we have a series of boards across the back. Basically, it kind of tells a story in order. What's the purpose of the study? What are we trying to accomplish? What are your existing facilities? What do you have right now in terms of pedestrian facilities and bicycle facilities? The analysis that we did and the justification for need. And then there's a series of recommendations for bicycles, pedestrians, trails, and intersections. So generally what we found is that you have some really wonderful facilities in town, parks, assets, and you have a lot of nice off-road trails, but what you have is really a lot of things that are not interconnected. And that happens in a lot of towns because things get built over time. Something gets built over here and it works really well. Something gets built over there and it's really great, but maybe they don't connect together. And that's a lot of the things that we found. More opportunities to make better connections. That's a really critical thing. Having a half a mile of trail that's a wonderful trail really doesn't do much for people in the big scheme of things. But having 5, 6, 7 miles of trail that takes you from your neighborhood to the store, get a cup of coffee, go to dinner, do a little shopping, gets you off the road, it's healthy, and that interconnected nature. A lot of the things that we found related to pedestrian improvements really stemmed from the fact that design and the standards for things change over time. So you might look at an intersection, say 571 and 130, say, we found a number of deficiencies, but they're really just things that have changed over time. When it was built, it was state-of-the-art. The state-of-the-art has really changed quite a bit over time, so the recommendations we have are more of saying that you just need to bring those things back up to standard. And ultimately, what we'll have is a list, sort of an implementation plan of all the things that are recommended and who owns that facility and who's responsible for that. And it's a mix of the town, the county, and the state. And each case, we identify who that responsible party is. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to turn it over to Reed. He's going to do the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Reed.
All right. I'll just kind of run through a kind of overview presentation, what we saw in the study. So the study was done in 2 main phases. Phase 1 was really kind of the existing conditions analysis. Kind of town-wide inventory of, as Pete mentioned, your existing bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. And then based on that, we were able to develop some, some recommendations for improvements to improve, bicycle and pedestrian mobility, safety, and access. And then, of course, we've got a public meeting here tonight. And then we'll, based on input we get, we can make some changes to the final report and get that to the town to move ahead with. So first thing we looked at was some of the crash data from the most recent 5-year period available. It was 2009 to 2013. And what we saw, there were 42 pedestrian crashes, 34 bicycle crashes during that time period. They were kind of scattered around town. The greatest concentration was kind of in the around 130 corridor, particularly bikes. And as far as pedestrian crashes go, actually, some of the bigger clusters were actually in some of the parking lots around town, some of the larger shopping plazas. One of the more notable statistics we saw, the vast majority of both bike and ped crashes actually occurred away from intersections. 81% of pedestrians and 65% of bike crashes, which is about 20 percentage point higher than the statewide average. So again, that would kind of point to more kind of corridor-wide issues rather than spot locations and crossing issues. Could be kind of lack of kind of gaps in the sidewalk network, maybe need for more mid-block crossings, those sorts of things. So based on what we saw in the crash data, and then also some local input we got from the study advisory committee, we kind of focused our field assessment on the 5 of the key corridors in town: Route 130, Route 33, 571, Hickory Corner Road, and Dutch Neck Road. And then kind of targeted the key intersections along those roads. Route 130 at 571, Hickory Corner, and Dutch Neck, and Hickory Corner at Oak Creek, and Dutch Neck at Oak Creek. So based on that, some of the kind of observations about the general strengths and existing resources the town has. The typical local street is generally very bicycle and pedestrian friendly. A lot of the older neighborhoods have a fairly continuous sidewalk network. And the streets are generally low volume, low speed, so they're generally comfortable for cyclists. The town's already doing a lot of improvement activities at intersections. For example, this is Dutch Neck at Oak Creek. Obviously recently had the sidewalk gaps filled, new curb ramps, crosswalks restriped. Some of the signaling along Route 130 seems to have been updated fairly recently. It's meets current standards. It's pedestrian signal heads with countdown timers. And as Pete mentioned, there's town has a lot of great off-road trail facilities. There's just a map of all the trails. I think it was about 9 paved and unpaved trails, and another 3 or so multi-use trails that have gone in with some of the recent development. So as Pete mentioned, there's a lot of great trails to be working with. Just a matter of kind of trying to knit them together. Some of the typical deficiencies we saw, some gaps in the sidewalk network, particularly along the arterials, where we saw some of the crashes occurring. These are just some examples. This was Hickory Corner near Route 130. Route 130 near 571. You can see kind of a worn path in the grass there. So obviously there's usage, but just need to fill in that gap. Accessibility of the pedestrian signals was also something that we saw fairly frequently. So the pedestrian signal heads have been updated recently, but they're not. The pedestrian push button isn't easily accessible from the sidewalk, which is obviously an issue if there's mobility impaired, you have a stroller, that sort of thing. A lot of the arterials too are major truck routes, high traffic volumes, high traffic speeds, so it's just generally unfriendly environment for bicyclists and pedestrians. Not a whole lot you can kind of do about that, but that's just kind of a context issue to be aware of. And then a lot of the residential streets are very wide, so it's an opportunity to be able to install bike lanes or bike infrastructure, but also wide streets without anything there can also encourage speeding, so that's kind of a deficiency. Then we also did a bike network analysis. For this, we looked at bicycle level traffic stress, which is basically a metric that helps us kind of try to quantify user comfort, how the cyclist perceives the roadway. So it's driven by three main factors. One is traffic speed. Obviously, the higher traffic speeds, less comfortable cyclists tend to be. It also looks at the number of lanes, which is kind of a proxy for exposure to traffic volume. Most cyclists are less comfortable the more cars that they're sharing the road with. And also looks at intersection treatments, particularly when you have the crossings of low-stress streets cross a high-stress street. How's that situation dealt with? Is it easy to cross, or is it kind of a stressful environment? So the metric breaks things down into 4 levels. Stress level 1 is comfortable for most users, including children. Stress level 2 is comfortable for most adult riders. Stress level 3 is comfortable for more enthusiastic riders who have a little bit more tolerance for riding with traffic. And then stress level 4 is kind of your most experienced riders, kind of your fearless, most confident riders who aren't really afraid to ride in most conditions. So we ran the analysis for the whole roadway network in town. And this is the results on the map here. The red is the high stress level 4. Orange is stress level 3, yellow 2, and green stress level 1. So you can see a lot of green on the map. These are all your residential neighborhoods in town. And the 4s are really those arterials that we talked about, the higher speed, higher volume roadways. So if we take those high stress roads out of the equation, you can see the residential neighborhoods are really kind of fragmented. There's nothing, basically islands. There's kind of low stress islands. There's no easy connection between the two. For example, you have kind of the Twin Rivers area over here to the east, and there's no easy connection to the rest of the municipality. So the key takeaways from the existing conditions analysis, in terms of crash data, again, most of the things we saw were along the main arterials. The signalized intersections, ADA compliance was kind of the main issue, just making it more accessible. And the medians on Route 130 might be an opportunity to provide some pedestrian refuge islands. In terms of the corridors, again, there's just kind of an issue of filling in sidewalk gaps. The bike network, as we just saw on that other map, the high-speed roadways really kind of fragment the low-stress network. And in terms of trails, again, a great asset, just to matter of kind of providing more connectivity. So based on that, these are kind of our draft recommendations. At each of the signalized intersections we looked at, we provided some kind of more detailed guidance on some pedestrian improvements. They're detailed on the boards in the back here, but in general, it was more about, again, filling in the sidewalk gaps, better access to the pedestrian push buttons, improving the curb ramps where they're needed, improving pedestrian lighting, those sorts of things. In terms of corridors, again, filling in the gaps in some of the network on some of the key roadways. Just an example of just a photo sim on Hickory Corner Road. Driveway design was another issue that we noticed, particularly on some of the more commercial corridor areas. On the left here is kind of treatment that prioritizes vehicle priority. It's constructed more like an intersection. The driveway is really at grade, and it, the sidewalk is interrupted effectively. So the preferred treatment would be more pedestrian priority, where the sidewalk gets kind of pulled across the intersection, and the motorist actually comes up to sidewalk grade. So they're basically makes them more aware that they're crossing pedestrian realm, and slows down turning movements. It's kind of our draft bike improvement network. Again, we were kind of looking at main goals. We're trying to improve connectivity across the whole town, kind of connect the neighborhoods together, and trying to make it accessible for riders of all ages, all abilities. So we're trying to provide that low stress level 1 or 2 facility. So we recommended series of either bike lanes. We had shared lane markings in a few locations. And some improved off-road paths. This is just a kind of breakdown of the main network map. These are where some of the bike lanes were proposed. For example, Dutch Neck Road, Hickory Corner, connection on Milford here to connect into the Twin Rivers area to connect that to Hightstown. Shared lane markings. Not really a facility type per se, but it's kind of an enhanced signage. It's a good way to kind of link key destinations, like kind of fill in gaps in the network, connect the trails to where we had proposed some bike lanes. And then along some of the higher speed roadways, we recommended some off-road kind of side paths. For example, short stretch of 33 would connect a bike lane that we had coming in at that Hickory Corner to proposed one on Airport Road. And then again, another connection to the Twin Rivers area. Then we also looked at the trail improvements. Again, this provided all about improving the low stress network. We looked at enhancing some of the crossings with better signage, better striping. And then we kind of had 3 tiers of trail improvements. Kind of phase 1 was kind of building off things that have already been recommended in previous studies, and really trying to focus on kind of connecting the existing facilities, kind of filling those gaps. Phase 2 is some shorter links that would improve overall connectivity. They may not have been studied in as much detail yet, but they could really kind of create a more robust network overall. And then phase 3 was very conceptual. It was more about looking at potential opportunities, things that might warrant further study to connect East Windsor to the regional trail network, for example, to the west towards the DNR Canal. So we tried to build on some of the existing work that's been done in terms of the trail system. Just kind of list of some of the studies that we studies and existing facilities we were trying to link to. Ruttersea Cook Greenway, for example, Union Transportation Trail, which you see. This is this link in blue here that kind of connects from the southern part of town towards the south. And this is the trail build-out map. These are detailed on one of the boards in the back as well, if you want to look at it in more detail. But the phase 1 improvements are the trail improvements are in the blue links you see on here. Phase 2, which was kind of the shorter links to improve overall network connectivity, is in orange. So, for example, there's a trail kind of runs behind the building where we are now. Point B on the map here. But there's an opportunity where you could go under the underpass of the bypass, kind of right behind here. So you could reuse that, use that underpass to get from that trail to an existing multi-use trail at the development over here. So we kind of link that development that's currently cut off by the bypass, kind of link that to the center of town, the shopping plaza here, municipal building, all those key attractors. And then the phase 3 lines are in the purple. Again, those were kind of the high level, potential for further study. Those really kind of looked at what are some existing right-of-ways that might be able to be used in the future. So we looked at, for example, utility line right-of-way down in here might be able to connect the Turnpike Park, towards the west and the DNR Canal. We also looked at access to schools. In a lot of places that was kind of building off what the town's already done with some of their Safe Routes to School applications, kind of reinforcing filling in some gaps in the sidewalk. This example, the recommendations around the high school. So we had recommending some bike lanes along Airport Road and a sidewalk along the kind of south side of the road. Then improved crossing to connect the sidewalk in these residential neighborhoods to the PAL complex here, and then some kind of maintenance and repair to the existing paths there, and extending those paths across the park to the high school. So as mentioned before, I need the feedback here tonight. We'll kind of go into the final report. We get that to the town, and then from there, hopefully, they can use that to pursue grant funding, and over the long term, kind of start to implement some of these improvements and build a better network for bicyclists and pedestrians in East Windsor.